when you have your walls finished and you've got coils on the inside smeared in, double check all the way around your project to see, do you see gaps in the walls? Do you see air showing through? When you look at the inside, if you see air between the cracks, then you have to either smear clay on the outside edge to patch it or a coil on the inside. Then, the next thing that you need to do is you need to get down at eye level of your box, and I want to look at the walls of my box. My walls need to be the same level or the same height. So I can take my fettling knife and I can start to cut down the tall edges. So any place where I see it's taller, I'm just going to slowly start to remove that extra clay. The key is your walls have to be the same height in order for your lid to sit flat on your project. Then I would also look at your project and do some smoothing just with your dry fingers, where you can smooth the edges of your walls, the top edges. Look at the outside edge of your box and start to smear and smooth away the rough spots or the bumpy spots. If you really have a lot of extra clay on the outside of your project, you can take your knife and you can just kind of trim off the extra clay. And once you've got all those walls leveled out and they're the same height, then we're ready to move on to make the lid. So I need to roll out a slab of clay that is going to be bigger than the top of my project, and then I'll show you how we get our lid to match our box. Okay, so now I've got my slab rolled out, and what I'm going to do is carefully pick up my box, make sure I support it from the bottom slab. I never want to just pick up a box by the walls. And then what I'm going to do is carefully turn this over so that now my box is on top of my slab of clay that I just rolled out. And you can even tell on the bottom how your original letter just became wider because of the thickness of the walls. So in order to get a lid to fit the top of my box, I turn my box over and I am going to gently, with an ink pen, I'm going to gently draw into the surface of the clay to make a carving. I'm not going to see the ink. I'm just gently carving a line onto the top of the clay. Okay, when I've traced around my entire letter, I'm going to pick my box up and I'm going to set that off to the side. And now I can see where I need to finish cutting out this line. Now, this might not look like your letter the way you drew it. So, for example, this side of mine is a little bit wider. Well, that happened because my walls leaned out a little, and that's not going to hurt anything. So, I'm going to take my fettling knife, and I'm now going to cut all the way through the clay. And I'm going to keep my scraps because I can use that for my decorative pieces. And then you have to think about how we just got our lid stencil. We turned the box over to trace it. So once I've got it all cut out, now I'm going to take my box and set my box next to me. And I'm going to pick this letter up and I'm going to flip it over. And now when I set that on top of my box, it should be a match. Now, I might need to move some of my walls with my finger because this clay is soft and flexible. So I might need to bend some of the walls to get back in the place where they need to go. And that is how I cut my letter to get it to match the bottom of my box. So now I'm going to wrap up my entire box, put it back on my board, cover it with my rag. I'm not going to use this box for a while, so I want to keep that covered up, and you can even put it under your table so that you're not hurting this while you're working. Okay, now I've got this design, or my lid cut out, and now I'm ready to start to build the 3D pieces. So you can look at your rough draft drawing, and you can look at ideas that were on the paper, or you can change your mind and just make it up as you go. Remember, you should have a theme to your project. So here was another project that I did with my last name of the letter K. My theme was art supplies and crayons. So what I did was I sculpted the letters to be 3D, but then I carved with the ink pen into the surface of the clay to make it look like these crayons had colored lines on the top. So I want you to make a couple of pieces that are 3D that stick up off the surface, but yes, you can also use your ink pen to carve details into the surface of the clay. So when I made my little crayons, I took a small piece of clay, I rolled it out, and then I used some of my carving tools to make it look like the end of my crayon. Let's see if I can get this closer. Had a wrapper on it. So I kind of carved that little texture in. And then I decided where I wanted it to be placed on my lid. Remember, any place two pieces of clay connect, you have to score, slip, stick, smooth. So I'm going to get my toothbrush with water. I'm going to brush where I want it to attach, brush where I want it to attach, and then I'm going to stick it on there. I'm going to pat that so it connects. And then I can use my finger and wipe away any extra slip that might have squeezed out. Remember, you can make designs from slabs of clay, coils of clay, or you can just pinch with the clay to shape it how you want. It is okay if your clay pieces come off the surface of the lid and extend out a little bit farther. But when we clean up today, your box is not dry enough to support the lid. So we do not store our lid on top of our box. Instead, we keep them side by side. So when I clean up, I'm going to get my board on top of my table. I'm going to open my rag and lay that. My box is going to go on one side of the board, and then I should be able to fit my lid next to my box, just like that. And you can see they're both still on the board. If it's hanging off, I just pull the rag and slide it over. The board is what's keeping my clay flat. So now I fold the rag over, and then I'm carefully, without smushing fingerprints into my clay, I'm going to keep this board flat, and I'm going to put it into the bottom of my bag. And then I'm just going to push all the extra plastic underneath, and then I go put this on my shelf, and then head back to your table to keep cleaning.